Hi there, my name's Martin, and today I'm going to be talking about microplastics and their effect on human development. I'll start by defining what microplastics are, then I'm going to discuss where they're being found and to what extent. I'd like to cover bisphenol A, BPA, as one particular plastic chemical that's having a known effect on human development at all life stages, and it's fairly representative of hundreds of plastic chemicals that are being studied. Then I'm going to talk about what our plastic future looks like on the Earth to conclude. So, to begin with, microplastics are just what they sound like. They're tiny little bits of plastic. And plastic, I'm sure you're familiar with it, is man-made. It's a variety of different materials, and it's made of all sorts of different chemicals. And we're surrounded by it every day. Easy examples would be like these glasses I'm wearing right now. Water bottles are one that's been in the news lately. So that clear plastic that makes up a water bottle uses bisphenol A, BPA, in it to give it the transparent property it has and to make it more flexible. Other examples would be our clothing. If they have polyester or nylon or spandex, those are all plastic chemicals. And then another one is tires, which I thought were made out of rubber, but they're made out of man-made materials, plastic chemicals. And as they wear out, they are turning into tire dust in our environment. So microplastics are tiny little bits. Technically defined, a microplastic is any piece of plastic smaller than 5 millimeters, which is about the size of a pencil eraser. And nanoplastics would be anything smaller than 1 micron. And at that smallness, that means it can get into our blood or across cell walls. And the way these plastics form is that plastics break up. They don't break down. It's not like a piece of fruit that you can compost in your compost pile to make dirt to grow another fruit tree. Plastic, as it degrades, breaks up into tinier and tinier particles. And as it does, it releases some of the chemicals that are used to manufacture it. BPA is an example of that. And then those chemicals are able to be absorbed into our bodies, or the plastic particles get so small that we're ingesting them or we're breathing them in. So, I read this one book titled A Poison Like No Other by Matt Simon, who's a science writer for Wired Magazine. It just came out in 2022, so this is fairly new research that's being discovered about this. And one statistic, just to highlight the extent that microplastics are in our environment, researchers measured plastic falling out of the atmosphere in 11 protected areas in the western United States, about 6% of the total U.S. landmass. They found 8 million pounds of microplastics were falling out of the sky each year. That's roughly 300 million water bottles raining down on that land yearly. So that's a lot. Additionally, they said any given moment there's about 2 million pounds of plastic blowing around in our air in the United States, and about 84% of that is tire dust. Found that to be kind of shocking. They also highlighted that plastics being found in every part of the earth. Samples have found microplastics in significant amounts in the deepest parts of the ocean, in ice core samples in the Arctic, and of course in the highest mountain regions of our land, far away from any kind of human activity. So it's pretty much everywhere and in pretty large amounts. So when I talk about bisphenol A as one specific chemical that is getting into our bodies as a result of this intense exposure from microplastics, I learned about this from a 2020 study titled Plastics-Derived Endocrine Disrupting Compounds and Their Effects on Early Development. So BPA is used in the manufacture of plastics, and it's known to be an endocrine disrupting chemical. So as plastics break up into microplastics, they are releasing BPA, and it mimics estrogen, and it absorbs into our bodies, and we then have our metabolism disrupted because our endocrine system governs how our body metabolizes everything basically. And while adults are able to filter out a lot of these microplastics and the associated chemicals with them, including BPA, infants and fetuses are not able to do that. And BPA is one chemical that's actually able to get past the placenta wall and into a fetus. And in fact, it's been found in every tissue of the human body, including mother's breast milk. So BPA is considered a teratogen, which you might be familiar with from Chapter 3 of our course. Teratogens contribute to genetic deformities during fetal development. And I think BPA was even mentioned in our text. But anyways, what they're finding out is not only is it a direct teratogen, but BPA exposure as an infant and as a fetus is being linked to a number of adult onset diseases, including heart disease, diabetes, depression, anxiety. Reproductively, it's linked to a reduced sperm count in men, and early onset of puberty in girls, which we learned about in our chapter on adolescence. So apparently, plastic exposure for microplastics and exposure to BPA in particular might be contributing to the early onset of puberty in girls because it's disrupting our endocrine system. It's also considered an obesogen, which means they're linking it to the increase of childhood obesity. Could be affected by BPA exposure as an infant or as a fetus in the womb. So that's a lot. And this is going to be with us for quite a while. And by the way, BPA is a representative chemical. There's hundreds of chemicals that are suspected of being just as toxic. And what's being done about this is that BPA has been outlawed in several countries, particularly in Europe, I think Canada as well. In the United States, they outlawed BPA's use in the manufacture of infant milk bottles, formula bottles, and in the plastic nipples that are sucked on those bottles to kind of reduce that BPA exposure a little bit. So what's being done about this right now is mostly just research. This is all fairly new, so society doesn't really have any plans in place to deal with the amount of plastic in our environment and the fact that it does not go away and it may be having severe adverse health effects on all of us all over the earth. In the year 2020, there was a law passed in the United States called the Save Our Seas 2.0 Act. And that commissioned a study that came out in 2022 titled Reckoning with the U.S. Role in Global Ocean Plastic Waste by the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. So anyways, this study just basically highlighted that we have a really big problem on our hands. Right now, plastic production is very huge and it's increasing. They're finding out that recycling doesn't work. Only 9% is ever recycled anyway of plastic, and that eventually can't be recycled either. So right now, in 2015, there was 8.3 billion tons of plastic waste released into the world, and plastic production is only increasing. So it's projected to be about 34 billion tons of plastic waste annually by the year 2050. So as you can guess, if we don't take action to reduce plastic production, we're going to be living with these adverse human development effects from microplastics and the associated chemicals that are in plastics for a very, very long time. And we're already living with them, and it's going to go on like that for the foreseeable future. So I look forward to learning more about this, and that's my presentation on microplastics and how they're affecting human development. Thanks for watching.